The red light comes up, which should be in a second. All good.
And hopefully now you can see my screen. Can you just confirm?
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect, thank you. So hello and welcome everybody to this talk about routes into teaching from the University of Brighton. So my name is Charlotte and I am the Student Recruitment Coordinator at the university. So normally I would be out and about delivering presentations at schools and colleges in person and attending higher education fairs. Obviously this is all being done online at the moment, but we hope to be seeing you in person soon. If you do have any questions whilst I'm talking today, so I won't actually be able to see the chat function whilst I'm presenting, but feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat function and I'll leave some time to pick up any questions at the end of the talk. So what we will cover today, so we are going to look at the different entry routes into teaching. We will look at the typical content and national curriculum subjects that you would be teaching. We'll look at the placements and time that you'll spend in schools during these qualifications. And we'll also have a look at some of the practical elements such as entry requirements, the experience that you'll be required to have, and also the application process. And we'll also touch on financial aspects to be aware of. So you are here today because teaching is something that you are interested in. So it's good to start thinking about the answers to these questions. So what is inspiring you to become a teacher? What age and subjects are you wanting to teach and why? And what do you think is involved in becoming a good teacher? And before I go on, a great website to have a look at after this presentation is the Get Into Teaching website, as this has got lots of really helpful videos and articles, and I will refer to this website a few times throughout the presentation. And if you're not sure about the answers to these questions, then that website can be really inspiring to kind of help you answer them. So something to be aware of is that for the majority, teaching is a graduate profession. And by that, we mean it's something that you have to go to university to do. But this is not always the case. However, for most progressing from college or sixth form, the route into teaching will be via university. When you start looking at courses and doing some research, different courses out there, then you'll often see the letters QTS. So this stands for Qualified Teacher Status, and this will allow you to go into a classroom after you finish your degree. So when you start looking at courses, having a QTS or Qualified Teacher Status will be really helpful for you to get straight into the classroom teaching after you've finished. So most degrees for teaching are 3 years, and there are also some 4-year options. And teacher training provision does change quite regularly. So it's important to keep looking at the website that I mentioned in the previous slide, Get Into Teaching website, as information does change. And the two main routes into teaching are undergraduate and postgraduate routes. So the undergraduate is the degree you do straight from college, and a postgraduate can be completed after the undergraduate. And there's also other routes into teaching, such as schools direct and apprenticeships that you might also use. So we're going to start off by having a look at primary teaching routes, and these are all undergraduate courses that we're going to look at this point. So for undergraduate routes into primary teaching, firstly, you do need to decide on the age group that you wish to teach, and there are a couple of different options. So you'd have a choice between early years primary education, which is ages 3 to 7, or standard primary education, which is ages 5 to 11. Both the degrees that we have here at Brighton are Bachelor of Arts honours with a QTS. And for the standard choice of ages, the 5 to 11-year-olds, at Brighton and some other universities, you can also add on a subject specialism, and this would either be in English or maths. So you're still becoming a qualified primary teacher, but you will spend a little bit more time either focusing on English or maths. And these degrees came about because schools were looking for people with these specialisms. So it could be that with these specialisms, you could go on to become something like the lead for numeracy or the lead for literacy in the schools that you're working at. So it's worth thinking about these if you're studying English or maths at A level or enjoyed these subjects at GCSE level. And students of these undergraduate primary courses would be looking at training across the full primary curriculum. You'll have placements which will be in Key Stage 1 and 2, and you'll gain an understanding of the transitions from early years to Key Stage 1, and then the transition of students from primary to secondary education. And there are also a small number of undergraduate routes into secondary education. So secondary teaching routes that you can do as an undergraduate, these are often 3 years, but you might also see 2-year and 4-year options. And you do also sometimes see degrees with middle school routes as well. So this would be ages 7 to 11. We don't do this here at Brighton, but you might see this when you start looking at courses. So maths, physical education and sciences are seen most commonly for these undergraduate courses into secondary education or secondary teaching. This will sometimes as well be a 2-year teaching degree with 1 year beforehand studying that subject. But it's important to know that the most common route into secondary education is to do a standard undergraduate degree in a subject like geography, history, etc., and then do a 1-year Pgce. So you'd be looking at 4 years in total, and I will touch further on Pgces in the presentation. So at Brighton, we do have a couple of courses which are subject specific for secondary teaching. So we have a 2-year secondary maths degree, so secondary mathematics education. So with this degree, you would need to spend 1 year studying maths at undergraduate level and then 2 years studying secondary maths education, so you qualify in 3 years. And we also offer the option to do physical education, and this would be at our Eastbourne campus. Again, this is a 3-year course. There are a few other options around the country. So mathematics with secondary education at Canterbury Christ Church University, secondary English education at Edge Hill University, and a couple of options at the University of Wolverhampton. So chemistry and physics with secondary education. And like I said, it is the most common route for students to study a standard undergraduate degree and then do a Pgce. But if you did want to go straight into secondary education after your undergraduate degree, then these are the most common subjects that you'll find at universities. There are other education courses available that do not include the QTS, but you might be interested in them as degree options, depending on what you're wanting to go into after. So at Brighton, we've got a couple of different options, and these are more for broader education studies. So if you do decide that you wanted to become a teacher, you'd still need to do a Pgce after completing these. Excuse me. So education studies. So this develops an understanding of education in a broader sense. So there'll be a general focus on education, sociology, philosophy and social policy. And there'll also be work placements which will enable you to explore different career paths such as education welfare, police education liaison and working with local authorities. And early childhood education and care. So this degree focuses on the early years. So unlike the primary teaching, this is focusing on children from birth. So you'll be considering the roles of the family or wider institutions on development and learning. So you might go on to work in areas like the nursery sector, maybe be a nursery manager, or things like youth work or special education needs. So I'm now going to go on to look at postgraduate taught routes into teaching. So postgraduate taught routes, as I mentioned, you can do any undergraduate degree and then move into a Pgce, which is a postgraduate qualification. And a Pgce stands for Postgraduate Certificate in Education. So Pgces are 1 year long or 36 weeks long actually, and they're very intensive in terms of placement. So you'll spend about 24 weeks in the schools. So they're certainly very practical qualifications. There are a set number of places for Pgce courses, and you would need to apply through UCAS teacher training. And for Pgces, it's worth looking at the bursaries and scholarships that are available for priority subjects, and I will mention this later on in the presentation as well. So you can also do a primary teaching option at Pgce level, which is important to know. I think a lot of people see this as a good route into secondary education, but you could still do a standard undergraduate degree and then move on to teach a primary education. So if you're doing a geography degree, for example, there's nothing to stop you doing a Pgce in primary education if this is what you decided what you wanted to do after you finished that degree. So your Pgce will draw on your degree experience, and therefore it's important to note that applicants need to consider the relevance of their degree. So for instance, for primary courses, if you wanted to go into teach primary level, there is no insistence on a particular curriculum subject, but students who are applying for a Pgce in primary teaching will still need to convince admissions tutors that their degree is relevant. So just some examples for you here. If you've studied something like media or advertising at undergraduate level, then you probably have developed excellent language skills. So this could relate to teaching something like English. Additionally, if you've studied for an arts or design, then you could go on to teaching something like a design technology. So your degree would need to be fairly relevant, but again, it would be you convincing the admissions tutors that your degree is relevant. And at Brighton, to give an idea of the range of options available, so we've got a very broad subject range for Pgces, and you'll probably see here that these will cover all of the standard topics that you would expect to see at secondary education. So for instance, maths, English, art and design, modern foreign languages and sciences, all of the different things that you will have studied at secondary education. And also at our Eastbourne campus, we offer physical education and dance Pgces as well. And I mentioned already, you can also do a primary postgraduate course, and this would be based in Falmouth and Brighton. And again, you would need to decide which age group you would like to teach, and also whether you'd like to add on one of those subject specialisms. And next into other routes into teaching. So this would be routes into teaching via the schools directly. So Schools Direct, more information about Schools Direct will be on the link that I mentioned earlier, so on the Get Into Teaching website. But this is where the school will be the training, the school hosts you to do the Pgce, and then the university will be the training provider. And these courses do also tend to include QTS. They tend to be more on-the-job training, and you need to have quite a lot of work experience for this route. So this route really does apply for people going into teaching a little bit later in life. So you need about 3 years work experience, and this doesn't necessarily need to be in teaching or a relevant profession. So I think it's always good to know that if you do go down a different route after university and then decide that you would like to go into teaching, then it's never too late, and you might want to look at considering this route. A postgraduate apprenticeship, this is for those who have completed an undergraduate degree and is similar to the Schools Direct programme, but you'll gain a PG cert from this qualification. And finally, Teach First, which you might have heard about. So this again is a salaried option, and this is for graduates with a 2-1 or above. And with the Teach First, you will usually be placed in schools in deprived areas, and you will receive a postgraduate diploma in education and leadership as part of this course, the Teach First course. So both of these are options, and again, they tend to be for those later in their career who have a little experience already. So I wanted to include this slide to highlight that there are other routes that you can take after studying to become a teacher. So it probably won't come as a surprise that most people that study teaching courses do become a teacher, or certainly do work in teaching at some point in their life. But teaching degrees really do provide a wide range of really transferable skills, communication skills, presentation skills, working with young people. So you can certainly study for a teaching degree and then go down a different career path if you change your mind at some point. And some of the roles that I've listed here that you that would really value skills that you've gained from studying to become a teacher would be things like corporate learning and development. So many large organisations will have staff members or teams that will be responsible for the learning and development of their organisation. And there are also companies that are set up as dedicated training providers as well. You might also want to go into something like youth work, student learning support, human resources, or even private tutoring. And I actually have 2 colleagues who I work really closely with at the university who work in our widening participation department. Both of them were formerly teachers, and their roles within the university involved going into schools and working with under 18s and supporting them and engaging them with higher education. So there's still lots of other options available for you. So what will you be teaching? So thinking about the subjects that you'll be teaching. So for primary teaching, you will focus on English, maths and science, and also Welsh for Welsh speaking schools. And additional national curriculum subjects are subjects that must be taught in schools. And these include things like history, geography and art, all of the subjects I'm sure that you will remember from school, and religious education. So this isn't a national curriculum subject, but this still must be taught in schools as well, and this can be an option for your Pgce also. So in terms of the content of your degree, so all courses will include school placements, and the number and length of these placements does vary from course to course. So for primary teaching, you will teach across the breadth of the curriculum. This is a greater focus on kind of the core subjects, so maths, English and science. And at secondary level, you'll have a much greater focus on the subject specialism. So you also cover things like education studies and pedagogy, and you'll also look at the study of education values and cover areas such as psychology, sociology, behaviour management, classroom organisation. Essentially, you'll learn how to teach. Pgce will draw on the degree experience that you've had already, and so you will, as an applicant to a Pgce, need to consider the relevance of your degree. And so the teaching degrees do have a heavy timetable. You're likely to be in lectures and seminars a lot more than you might find some of your peers on other courses. So there's certainly challenging degrees, but certainly very rewarding and obviously have great career prospects. So in terms of the amount of time that you'll spend in schools, this does vary between courses, but you'll typically spend a minimum of 24 weeks in schools to be able to get the QTS. So for a 3-year degree, 24 weeks will probably be spread over the 3 years. A 4-year degree is typically about 32 weeks, which would be spread over the 4 years. And I mentioned previously, so a Pgce also includes 24 weeks spent in schools, but this is spread over just 1 year or just 36 weeks. So certainly a much higher proportion of your time will be spent in schools when you're studying for a Pgce. And what would your day look like once you've become a teacher? So a day in the life of a teacher is really varied. So no 2 days will be the same. But your day as a teacher will look different, of course, depending on whether you're teaching a primary, secondary, or depending on what subject you teach as well. And each school will have its own schedule and different responsibilities outside of teaching hours. But aside from classroom time, many teachers find that teaching is quite flexible, and you can choose when to do your marking, your planning for the next lessons, and admin work. And good to note that teachers also do get more holiday than other professions. Full-time teachers work for about 195 days per year in school, although any of the teachers that I know would heavily dispute this because they put in long hours during their working week. So typically 7:45 arrive at school. So many teachers like to get to school around this time so that they can prepare for the day, get any equipment that they need, and make sure everything's ready for classes to start. At about 8:20, you might have something like a staff meeting. So this will be a meeting in the morning to just catch up with the team or your staff, faculty members. At 8:30, your day will normally begin with your form time. Might include things like uniform and planner checks, or even sometimes some numeracy and literacy skills activities. Typically, lessons would start about 9 o'clock, and not every day would be full timetable of lessons, particularly for secondary teachers. Teachers might have free periods that are spread across the week, so these can be used to catch up on things like marking or planning. Lunch break, obviously, afternoon lessons, 3 o'clock. So this is a typical end of the school day, but it doesn't mean that it's the end of the school day for teachers, and they usually stay at school for a couple of hours to do marking, planning, admin work, or contact parents about behavioural issues. And some days the school will have staff meetings or professional development after the students have gone home. So lots of teachers kind of finish school about 5 o'clock actually. And in terms of the weekend, they may choose to do some marking or planning over the weekend, but others choose to fit it into their working week. And moving on to entry requirements. So entry requirements at Brighton, we require 5 GCSEs at C or level 4 and above. And this would need to include English, maths and science for primary teaching. And the primary undergraduate A-levels required is BBB, or for BTEC would be DDM. For secondary education, we would be looking at grades in the range of BBB to BCC at A-level, and you would need to have studied the subject that you are wishing to teach. So if you're wanting to teach secondary maths, then you would need to have completed an A-level in maths and achieved a grade B in that. Do also check out the equivalent BTEC grades via the UCAS tariff calculator. At Pgce, you would need a degree relevant to the chosen national curriculum subject, which I mentioned already. And the interview might include assessments. So previously, students wanting to become teachers had to sit a professional skills test, and this had to be done at a centre. So now these have been scrapped, but universities, as part of the interview day normally, will include literacy and numeracy assessments. And this will differ now between universities, so do have a look at this for more information. And relevant work experience. So people do hear that 2 weeks work experience in a school is essential, but this is not a requirement. However, it's certainly a good idea. Admissions tutors will certainly want to know that you've had a good insight into the realities of what teaching is like and what it's like being in the classroom with children. So if you don't have work experience, it's good to start thinking about how you can get it. And we do understand that it is more difficult at the moment, and you may have to think outside the box in terms of getting work experience at the moment, but maybe you could get involved with some online youth clubs or cubs or brownie groups that are meeting online at the moment. Also, the Get Into Teaching website, this does provide help arranging school experience, and you can check this out as well. It's also good to get experience of the age group that you wish to teach, but again, this is not essential. Actually, any experience teaching children will be helpful, and this doesn't necessarily have to be classroom based. Like I mentioned before, maybe virtually you can join a Cubs or Brownies meeting. And also make sure that you read about the sector and the industry, and make sure that you know what's going on. So there's lots of education news coming out all of the time. So the BBC has an education section. This is a great place to start. Have a read of the different industry publications and make sure that you know what's going on. And in terms of selection criteria, so you'll need to demonstrate your potential to become a good teacher. You need to demonstrate your ability to relate to the age group, and that you've got a clear understanding of what the profession involves. So applicants will also need to demonstrate that they're enthusiastic, motivated, and committed to putting in the effort that that degree requires. And also, if you are wanting to teach something like physical education, then you will need to have demonstrated coaching experience. And finally, fitness for practice. So this is things like health and DBS checks. And universities may also check your handwriting, as this is important for teachers. So in terms of the application form, this will be done by UCAS, which I'm sure you've heard about already. So please be honest on your application forms and make sure that details are accurate. And your reference from your college or school is important as well. And admissions tutors will be looking for a strong academic background as well as being fantastic with kids. And the personal statement. So this is a key part of the application process, and I'm sure that you've started thinking about hearing about personal statements at this stage. So for teaching courses, admissions tutors will be looking at correct use of grammar, punctuation, spelling, as these are all key parts of being a teacher. And do also be clear about the length of experience that you have. So it is likely to be picked up on in the interview. So do be honest about this. And also mention what you have gained or learnt from your work experience. In your personal statement, you can also include other positions of responsibility. So these could be relevant to teaching or not, or I'm sure that you can find transferable skills from maybe jobs that you're doing at the moment or have done in the past. And you can also include other interests and hobbies, and particularly where these might relate to teaching. So for instance, if you're applying to teach at primary level and you're interested in art and music, do mention this. This might be something that you can get involved with when you're doing a primary degree. And admissions tutors will really want to see that you're a well-rounded person and get an idea about you and what you're interested in. So we talked a little bit earlier about those key questions. So what is inspiring you to go into teaching? So do reflect on these questions for your personal statement. And it's also a good idea at this stage to start keeping a teaching log. So write down any experience that you're gaining at the moment or any knowledge that you've learned, as these will be really helpful for you to look back on before your interview or before writing your personal statement. And the interviews, so these are often a compulsory part of the application process, and certainly at Brighton, we interview all applicants that are shortlisted for teaching courses. So this year, this has all been done online, but it's normally in person. And the interview is likely to include a written task, group tasks to see how you work with the team, and sometimes group interviews. And your interviewers will have teaching experience, so they know exactly what they're looking for. Sometimes you might also have a practical session. This will be if you're wanting to teach subjects like physical education or dance, and sometimes you might be asked to do a presentation. And in your interview, it's important to adopt a professional approach. So wear a suitable outfit, dress as though you were going into school or a professional environment is always recommended. And decisions are carefully moderated, and decisions will be released through the UCAS portal, and standard and non-standard offers are possible. And when results are confirmed, Brighton will look at the interview performance of the candidates to make that do not make the offered grades. So typical interview day at Brighton, so what you'd expect, maybe welcome from the admissions tutors or course leader. There'll be the in-person interview, so you'll be asked for a qualification check, complete the written task, maybe then some lunch, then move on to group task, practical sessions for PE and dance, and you might be asked to do a presentation. So this is likely to vary from university to university and course to course, so do read up on the information before attending the interview. But this is just to give you a bit of idea of what you can expect at a typical interview day. So in the interview, what do admissions tutors want to know? Well, the first thing they want to know, of course, is why do you want to teach? So make sure that you can answer this question really clearly and really well. They will also want to know what are the qualities of a good teacher, what are the highs of teaching, and what might be the lows or the most challenging aspects of being a teacher. How would you deal with challenging behaviour and safeguarding issues? So make sure you start thinking about these questions, and particularly in advance of the interviews, thinking of what or how you might answer these questions and what your views on teaching might be. So moving on to finance, so for degrees relating to teaching, the undergraduate standard fees apply, and this is currently £9,250 per year, and that's for 2021 entry to university. We are expecting this to stay the same for 2022, although this has not been confirmed. You also, as a teaching student, you'll also be eligible for maintenance and the tuition fee loan through Student Finance England. For postgraduate courses, full fee also applies, but you will be eligible for maintenance loans, and you'll apply for this through the same application portal. So again, through Student Finance England for those students in England. And with Pgces, there are also some bursaries and scholarships that are available as well. So these are some of the financial incentives. And again, this is for 2021 entry, and this might change for 2022, and it tends to be based on which subjects are required or demanded for in demand for teachers across the country. So at the moment, we've got maths, physics, chemistry and computing teachers. So if you're wanting to be a teacher of one of these subjects, then you could expect a scholarship of £26,000 or bursary of £24,000 if you were entering to start university in 2021. Classics and languages, bursaries of £10,000, and biology, bursary of £7,000. And some of the subjects as well that you're studying, once you've qualified, you might also qualify for early career payments. So this is worth looking at as well, particularly if you're interested in teaching maths and sciences. And finally, what can you expect to be paid as a teacher? So as a newly qualified teacher, you could earn between £25,714 and £32,157 per year. And this depends where you teach. So you can see here that if you're teaching in inner London, then you will be entitled to more money as a teacher than you would in the rest of England and Wales. And the salary will progress as your teaching career progresses. So it's possible to move up through these pay ranges. And if you moved on to become a leading practitioner, so a leading practitioner is an excellent and highly skilled teacher who consistently demonstrates the highest standards of classroom practice. And in this role, you could earn between £42,000 and about £72,000 per year. And again, this would depend where you teach. And finally, head teachers. So these are the teachers that are leading, motivating and managing the staff in the school. So in this role, you can earn between about £47,000 and £125,000, depending on where you teach. So there's lots of scope to have an excellent salary as a teacher, certainly. So if you do want more information about teaching at the University of Brighton, then do have a look at the University Open Days and do have a look at the other universities that you're considering as well, as they're probably holding Open Days this spring, summer as well. So at Brighton, we're holding Open Days in May, June and July. So you can see the dates on the screen here: Thursday, 27th of May, Saturday, the 19th of June and Saturday, the 10th of July. So these are a fantastic opportunity for you to come and hear from the academics, see the different academic presentations, and also speak to our students as well, and have virtual tours of the university and information about all things university, such as accommodation, finance, etc. We've also got subject explorer sessions. So they start from next week, and on the 18th of May at 3 p.m. there is an introduction to what it is like to study education and teaching. So in these subject explorer sessions, you can hear from our lecturers, current students, and ask questions about your subject and explore example topics. We've also got summer schools coming up. So these will be running in June, July time this year. The dates are likely to be released in the next week or so. And this will be a good opportunity for you to get involved with some academic projects, and they're completely free to attend. And finally, we are hosting, or we're attending, a student panel session tomorrow. So one of the students from the University of Brighton and students from 4 other universities across the UK will be talking about why they chose their course and why they chose their university. So if you're interested in that, then that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. and I can pop a link in the chat function if you are interested. And other ways to keep in touch. So if you have any questions that I'm not able to help with, or you think of anything after this presentation today, then you can always get in touch with our inquiries team. So they're available by phone and online as well, and they can pretty much answer any question. And if they can't, then they can certainly put you in contact with the right person. We also have a great function on our website to speak to one of our students. So if you're on the Brighton website and you're browsing through our different courses, you often see a little pop-up box saying chat to our student. And these will likely be a student that's either studying that course that you're looking at or studying a really similar course. So they are fantastic people to speak to about what the courses are like and what university life is like in general as well. And you can also follow the universities that you're interested in on social media. So particularly the YouTube channels here at Brighton, they've got some great resources on the YouTube channels, students talking about what their experience is like studying at Brighton and what their experience has been like studying their particular course as well. And finally, the student room. So this isn't affiliated with any particular university, but we always recommend this because it is a really great forum to ask questions and search for information. It's a great place to look for information for current students and prospective students as well. And if you are interested in teaching at Brighton, then I would really recommend looking at the Brighton's School of Education teaching page. And also, I've mentioned a few times already the Get Into Teaching website. It is a fantastic resource for anyone who is interested in teaching. Like I said, you can find out some really helpful information there, and also as well can help you arrange work experience as well, which is certainly going to be really helpful at the moment. And so that's the end of the main presentation. So feel free to start popping some questions in the chat function if you haven't done so already. And I'm going to come out of this presentation now.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of the information, Charlotte. I think it was very detailed and thorough. We've got one question at the moment, which was from Raven, who said, are the open days online or in person?
Yeah, so we are delivering our open days online this year, and I think that most universities will probably be doing the same. I'm not sure whether you were aware, but there was initially plans for UCAS and some of the higher education fairs to run in person, which have now moved online as well. So I think that there's kind of across the sector, unfortunately, it feels like activity is going to continue online throughout the summer, but certainly we're really hopeful as we get into the autumn term. I know a lot of the students here are first year college students, so there's still a little bit of time. I know your UCAS application deadline's about November time, isn't it? Internal deadline. So hopefully there'll still be a bit of time for you to come and visit the open days in person. But obviously, please do feel free to come down to Brighton. And actually, you'll find with a lot of universities that their campuses or their buildings will be restricted, but their campuses aren't actually restricted. So you can walk outside and you can walk around the different buildings and stuff. You won't be able to enter any buildings, but I mean, I think it certainly was good to see what the students are up to and just like get a feel for the place and the location, visit the town, visit the beach, the city centre and all those bits as well. Give you a good idea of what student life's like here.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I think that's all of the questions at the moment. But I think that's because you did include lots of really useful information for the students there. So thank you very much for your time today, Charlotte, and for everybody who's joining. I'm sure if anybody does have any extra questions, they can always use the contact details that you had on the previous slides to find out more. But yeah, thanks very much. I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for attending. It was really nice talking to you today, and I am going to pop a link in the chat function. Yeah, I've just popped a link in the chat function for our online event. So I mentioned that Subject Explorer session. So if anyone wants more information from academics and current students, then that's going to be a really good session that's coming up in May. But thank you, everyone, and thank you for all your thanks.